Hey, cater your next youth sports meal from Subway at Grants Ferry. Baseball, softball, soccer, or you need to feed the teachers. Subway at Grants Ferry. Super good subs. Make them hot. Subway at Grants Ferry. Or grab lunch there today. Grab and go, baby. We are the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 1059 The Zone. The official bourbon of the Out of Bounds Show is Wild Turkey 101. Perfect for grilling and steaks and ribs. Pair with Wild Turkey 101. Fabulous Kentucky straight bourbon. WildTurkey.com. Good morning. Welcome in. We welcome in Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. Mike, I know the Saints won, so there were people that were happy in your area, but describe the reaction to LSU getting blown out by Alabama Saturday.
I think shock of such a poor performance in a big game. That was a lot of hype to this. I mean, they bring in some of the top recruits in the nation. You're playing under the lights in Tiger Stadium, and you came out flat as a pancake. Alabama came in here with a mission and a job to do, and they got it done. And that loss is on the Mount Rushmore of losses at LSU. It's one of the worst losses in LSU history because you didn't show up. And that's on Brian Kelly. No matter how you cut it, it's on him. This is his third year. He's always talked about the third year being the key and how he's had success. And that was an embarrassing loss to Alabama.
Mike Detillier on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Okay, so you mentioned this is year 3. The college football playoff is not going to happen. So you'll go to a bowl that most people won't be interested in. A lot of teams would be, but not LSU caliber deal. So, Mike, how much pressure will be in the building with Brian Kelly and the staff going into 2025?
You're going to have to describe what you mean by pressure. He's got 7 more years left on a contract that's paying him $10 million a year.
Wow.
Okay. LSU fans, I'll get rid of him. Okay. Cut me that $70 million check. Okay. It's a knee-jerk reaction and not understanding or not wanting to know what's set up here. Okay. You paid, I think it's $17 million to Coach O to walk away. Come on. This is on Scott Woodward here. Okay. He's the one who gave him a 10-year contract. He's got 7 more years, and it's right around $10 million a year. So, yeah, he's got pressure on him. But coaches today with that type of securement, both the definition of pressure, you're going to have to describe it.
Well, so I get. We talked about it yesterday. All the money that he's got on his contract, but do you think that he'll have to? I mean, his defensive coordinator is the highest paid assistant in college football, so he just got there from Missouri. I'm sure he's on a multi-year deal. He promoted from within at OC, which I don't think you do that at LSU. You go get the best of the best because you act like you're LSU. It just looks like, I know Brian can coach, but it looks like some of the decisions of his top lieutenants aren't necessarily working out, Mike D.
What I see is a little bit of a disconnect. And it happens to even the best coaches. And because teams change from year to year on how they react to what you're trying to do as a coach. This team never did react that way. You knew the defense couldn't get worse than it was a year ago. And I think Blake's overall done a pretty good job. You had glaring holes at defensive tackle, cornerback, safety. We talked about it in the offseason over and over. Those holes are still there. They didn't address them. And, they brought in guys, but, Brian was the one who sort of lashed out at, a couple of players they wanted to bring in, and they got better deals somewhere else. Mm. So what were you going to expect, at that point? There's a little bit of disconnect. And I think he's got to admit that maybe the message didn't get across as well this year. And because he's one of those type of coaches, and I agree with you. I think he's a really good coach. But maybe this year that didn't get across right to his players. And it happens to the best of them. Happens to the absolute best of them that it didn't totally get across. And a lot of times, too, leaders on your team, guys that you're not going to let this happen. You can lose, but not in this manner, Bo. That to me was an embarrassment. All across the board. You didn't seem to be prepared after you had 2 weeks to get ready for Alabama. You didn't seem prepared. So when I look at it that way, and I see it in the NFL and in college football, I think a lot of times it goes back to that. Maybe the message this year didn't get across to his team. I thought year one, after a difficult start, he got the message across to his football team. And they seem to be piecing it together. Last year, offensively, could you ask for anything better? But defensively, you were so bad. And then you thought this year, this team probably could win 10 games. But it's the way you lost to Alabama. You didn't even see it be in the same area code as them, football-wise. You got outplayed, outcoached, out-hustled in your own backyard.
Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Out of Bounds show. Brian Kelly, $70 million on his contract. Brent Venables, $44 million on his. Mark Stoops, close to that amount. So, guys, Kelly's not struggling like Venables and Stoops, but guys where athletic directors have just loaded the boat on these guys, and a lot of them will have the chips again for another year or two. Do you expect LSU to be much more active in the transfer portal while still hauling in a really good high school class, Mike D?
Yeah, this may be his best high school recruiting class he's ever had. If he can keep some of the out-of-state guys, and Bryce Underwood being one of them, who's the quarterback, number one rated player in the nation from Michigan. If he keeps that intact, yes. And then I would think he would be active in the transfer portal. At defensive tackle, I think is a huge area of need, along with cornerback. Those two areas, I think, are glaring weaknesses on this football team. And so, man, if they can land this class and get some guys that have a little experience in the secondary and a defensive tackle, that would go a long way. But remember, as you add that, you're probably going to lose your two starting offensive tackles in Will Campbell, Emory Jones. Those two guys have started since they were freshmen at LSU. That's something too. Well, I see it across college football, but I didn't think I'd live long enough for that one. That teams are starting true freshmen at left and right tackle. That's normally a spot where, you got a veteran guy there. How will that be handled for them? And see what happens with Garrett Nussmeier. What his decision's going to be. Does he come back for another year at LSU? That's going to be a key also. If he decides to return to LSU for another year, or does he turn pro? Based on the last few weeks, I saw some people had him like the number one rated quarterback in the country. He's not that good at this stage. I think that got brought that down to earth, so to speak. Okay. So he's got some pieces. And I thought last year's recruiting class was very good. This year's recruiting class could really top the charts. But, Bo, I think it's obvious he's got some weaknesses, and he has whiffed on transfer portal people along the defensive line and in the secondary. He's whiffed on those guys the last 2 years.
Okay. Mike Detillier.
So now, my thing is, how did we miss? Let's get back down to the problem. How did we miss on those guys? So Brian's got to do some, I think, soul searching on how he's getting his information. Come on, Kelly's not out there recruiting these guys or evaluation. It comes down to him because he's the final say. Well,
it'll be interesting to see what Austin Thomas does. He left Kiffin's staff last January, and Kiffin and them had him as their whiz kid as far as the portal.
He was here before.
He was, and he did a hell of a job the last couple of years at Ole Miss. And he left around February 1, as you know, Mike. So he's been on the ground for 10 months in Baton Rouge, and I think he will have he'll be 1A when it comes to the say and presenting players to Brian Kelly, and we'll see what y'all don't have to do a lot. I mean, you don't have to do what some of these other teams do, getting 20, 25 portal players. LSU can get 8 to 12 because of the way you recruit in high school. But as you said, Mike D, you got to nail 5 to 7 of them, and then you got a ball team, right?
Other than Jayden Daniels, give me another name from the transfer portal they hit.
Yeah. It's
think about that. And this is year 3. And none of those guys on the defensive side of football. Now, I will say this, Braden Swinson has played pretty well this year. He was a transfer portal guy he's from Georgia, went to Oregon, and then came back. But, my thing is, when you could only name one and then a second, I think that's where you're missing this, where you could get immediate help in the transfer portal. Because grooming young players, some guys can play right away, and some guys can't. They maybe not physically or kind of mentally adept to picking up what you're trying to teach them right away. And it may take a year or two. But the transfer portal people, that's where I would have to take a very hard look if I'm Brian Kelly. And look, most likely he could run the table and get with a 9-win season. You go to a bowl game, win 10, but that's not going to satisfy LSU fans. You know that. That's not going to satisfy them.
Nope.
They'll say, wait a minute, didn't we win 10 games last year with the worst defense in college football, or one of them? And we had the Heisman Trophy winner and 2 other first-round pick guys. So, man, you kind of caught here where if you run the table and win 9 games and then you win a bowl game, for a lot of teams, they would consider that a success. That's not how you're going to measure it here.
Mm-mm.
Fair or unfair, it's the way it is.
Mike Detillier talking SEC football on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Hey, Mike D, how do you feel about Alabama now that you got to see them? I mean, do you feel like they've turned the corner? Where do you think they are right now after this dominating performance over LSU?
I always thought that they were one of the top teams in college football, but I knew they were flawed in a couple areas, and they're the hardest teams to gauge, okay? Because we saw how good they were in the first half against Georgia, and then almost lost the game. We saw what happened in the meltdown in the fourth quarter against Vanderbilt. And yet you watch what they did to LSU. So you become Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in a lot of cases. But they are talented. And, Jaylen, I know for LSU fans, they're glad he's not playing no more games against them. Man, he was a one-man show. But, I think the key for them, Bo, is getting better defensively in the secondary, where they have some talent. I think they were very young in the secondary. Now the young guys have a little bit of experience. And I think that's a key for them. And can they run the football consistently well? I think that's the thing that if I was an Alabama guy, I would want to see more, because you know what you're going to get with Jaylen. He's going to be a little bit of the rocky road as a passer, but he scares the bejesus out of you every time he gets back there. That, man, he can make a throw that'll change a game or take off running. So I think the key for them is the ability to run the football and get better in the secondary. I think their front seven has always been pretty good. But their secondary, because you lost Terrion Arnold to the NFL, he's a first-round pick. Kool-Aid McKinstry was a second-round pick with the Saints. You lost Trey Amos, who's now at Ole Miss. You had a transfer portal guy who was a freshman All-American go to Ohio State. And that you can say next man up. That don't work. There is no next man. That next guy might have talent, but he doesn't have experience. They don't have the depth. And so hopefully for them that can come around as the season gets farther down. But I think running the football and playing better in coverage is going to be the key for them. And I think they could be a team that gets hot in December, and you don't want to play them because of that guy under center. You can say we practice that. No, you can't practice his speed. There's no way you can practice that. You don't, unless you got people from the track team coming out there and playing quarterback for you. He's a unique talent. And I said this before the season and doing shows. I do weekly shows in Alabama. He's the closest quarterback athletically to Jayden Daniels in college football this year. He's the closest. I think Jayden can certainly throw the ball, and he's more accurate than what Milroe is. I'm not sure Milroe's not faster.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Mike. What if you drop Diego Pavia on a team with Bama type talent or LSU type talent?
He'd be a difference maker. Now he's a different style quarterback.
Sure.
He's more Nussmeier than he is Milroe, as far as that is concerned. He's much more like Garrett than he is Jaylen. And so I respect what he's done. And you got to say, hey, that guy is one tough cookie. He's smart. He's accurate. He's a winner. And, hasn't he been part of putting Vanderbilt football on the football map? Come on, we never thought this stage of college football we'd be talking about Vanderbilt.
No.
No one would have thought that. Even the most ardent Vanderbilt fan could not have dreamed how this season has transpired. And you know what? I'll say the same thing about South Carolina. Was anybody really talking about South Carolina before the season? No, they weren't. They weren't coming out of your mouth as a team that, hey, I really don't like to play them. Now, again, there are some flaws in them because of their passing game. It's not quite there. But, man, can they run the ball and can they get after the quarterback? It's almost like you hear the gun go off, track sprinters. And you see those guys coming off the edge, and you can almost hear the tackles holler, watch out. They coming. And it's fast. And they got good special teams, certainly with Shea Beamer being the coach. Look at Vanderbilt, look at South Carolina. The two biggest surprises in the SEC. Do you want to play South Carolina right now? If you're another SEC team?
No.
They pretty doggone good. And I don't think anybody would have thought that before the season started.
No. And they got better the last month with some things happening, as you know. All right, Mike D.
They can run the ball, and they got
stop the run.
And they have gotten much better stopping the run. I knew they could get after the quarterback, but, they got a freshman defensive end. This guy looks like he could go to the NFL today, the way he comes off the edge. And then you get a transfer portal young man from Georgia Tech who's really good too. And, man, they come after you. And nothing wins games more in the fourth quarter than a pass rush. Nothing wins it more than that. When you can put pressure like they can.
Ask Georgia this weekend.
Man, they go good. And really, they spit the bit against LSU. They had them. They really had them.
Mm-hmm.
They had a big lead. Kind of lost it. Nussmeier got hot. And, their secondary kind of got it. Now, they got a pass rush on LSU. They put a lot of pressure on him. But a interception and then a personal foul of roughing the quarterback changed that game. They really had LSU beat late. Nussmeier throws a pick, but, man, the defensive end just crashed on him. And you
Might
got
be.
the roughing the passer.
Hey, buddy, have a great week. Thank you, man.
Thank you, bud.
Mike Detillier, WWL Radio New Orleans, brought to you by Subway at Grants Ferry. Good morning. Welcome in on a chilly Tuesday.